Joseph Enfield shook under the covers. He had heard that voice again, the voice of the old man outside, the man who wanted in. He clutched his fist tightly at the sheet over his head and closed his eyes. His mother hadn't believed him about the man outside. It was a dream, she'd tell him, just his imagination. She had told him, be it the man outside or a monster under the bed, that all nightmare creatures would simply vanish if he wished them away. He had that power, she had promised. Just wish and they'll be gone. And yet, here he was, wishing upon wish while the voice called on.
"Joseph,"
it had said.
"Come to the window, Joseph."
He had seen the man just once, on the night he had first heard the voice. He had knelt on his bed and peered out. Just a glance, enough to see the outline of the figure below. Then he slipped back into the darkness of his room to hide until morning. The man had been standing by the front door under the canopy, his face obscured and his body blackened with shadow. Joseph had been able to make out the man's feet, clear enough to tell that he was facing towards his window, if not looking directly at it. And a hand, one withered hand at his side. Again the man had called for him.
"Joseph, let me see you, Joseph."
It had been enough to keep Joseph from the window for nights, and within a short distance of the house ever since. The Enfields had a large country house in Brockenhurst, nestled behind rows of farmland and cradled by the surrounding forest. On a good day you could stand at the front of the house and look out past the long drive, over the heavy wooden gate which stood between the drive and the road, and far over the farms into town. At night, you could see as far as the gate if you looked hard enough. Anything further was lost in darkness. But tonight, a bright and full moon shone down like a spotlight over the house, its pale glow reflected off of Joseph's covers, and painted creeping whites along the ceiling of his bedroom. Whites which, in their fleeting absence, left shadowed faces to grow and grin over him, their fanged mouths giving features to the voice outside.
"Joseph, I can see you, Joseph."
Again, Joseph wished it all away. He wished for the man to go and for the shadows that eyed him from above to cease and dissolve from the rays of an early sunrise. But the voice came again.
"Joseph."
Then, a tapping at the window. Joseph's blood ran cold. His fingers became crooks of ice clenching the cover. Was he really there at the window? Could he really see in? The thought made Joseph feel sick with fear. His breath jutted from his chest.
"Open the window, Joseph."
More tapping, rhythmic like rain. Joseph could imagine the old man's fingernails against the glass. How could he be at the window? There was no way up, no foothold to climb, no cracks or breaks in the wood of the wall large enough for any hand to grasp.
Tap, tap, tap.
Joseph tried to steady his breath. He wanted to cry out, to cast off the covers and run to the safety of his mother's room. But there was no way out. The old man would see him, and Joseph, in his panic, would see the old man.
Tap, tap, tap. "Joseph, open the window."
How long until morning? No shadow could writhe and flourish under the light of the sun, the old man included. Night was his domain, and only night. Lurking in the darkness, calling out, wanting in.
"I know you're there, Joseph. I can see you."
How long? How long until the first ray of the sun would cleanse the shadows from the room? How long had Joseph been cowering under the sheet? How long had the man been calling out? The clock. On the windowsill, a clock. Joseph had to see it. He crept one hand out from beneath the cover, keeping it tight against the mattress and out of view of the window. Then he snaked it upwards, but the sill seemed impossibly high and out of reach. And what if he had been able to reach? The old man would still see his hand. He'd still know, beyond all doubt, that Joseph was there. At least, under the safety of the covers, Joseph had been able to convince himself that the man hadn't really seen him or known that he was there.
Just open the window, Joseph.
Moving slowly to his knees, Joseph wrapped the cover tightly around his body and formed a hood around his head. He pulled down a tuft that had stuck out above his face and used it to cover his forehead. He could barely see under it, but it was enough. He'd creep up, slowly, very slowly. He'd look at the clock and then lower himself, back behind the wall.
Tap, tap, tap.
Joseph took in a deep breath through his nose and exhaled through his mouth. His heart beat faster. It pounded in his chest. He felt its pulses in his neck. Okay, he told himself. On the count of 3.
Tap, tap, tap.
1.
Joseph.
2.
Listen to me, Joseph. Open the window.
3. Another quick breath and then up, faster than he had intended. He shot up to the windowsill, and there behind the clock in the corner of the window, 2 dark eyes peering in. Knowing eyes in a face gaunt with death. Not an old man, a dead man. His father.